Oh, this is gonna be so nerdy. Spruce wood is a very popular choice for a guitar player to choose on their instrument. That's because it has all of the prime qualities you would look for when you're designing an instrument. It is light, it is resonant, it is stiff, perfect. But within the spruce family, there are, of course, a whole host of other options that exhibit different tonal qualities and aesthetic qualities. I mean, there's Carpathian, there's Engelmann, there's Sitka, there's Swiss Moon Spruce, there's Adirondack. I mean, the list goes on. It is a huge wealth of choice that Mother Nature has given us. But it is easy to get very overwhelmed. I'm still learning this stuff too, of course I am. So in order to give my clients the best advice that I can possibly give, I've stolen 3 pieces of wood from my wood stash up there. I chose a higher end acoustic guitar spruce choice. I chose a celebrity wood that costs a lot of money. And I finally chose a bog standard spruce that you might see in your local guitar shop. These, I guess, were the pieces I found that were the most similar in terms of thickness and width and length. One of them's a bit thicker and a bit smaller, but I'm hoping that it will be good enough for you to get a real understanding of what these timbers sound like. Obviously, things like bracing will impact this, so this is a very, very loose study, more of an interesting idea as opposed to God's ruling on actual sound of tone woods, just so my ass is covered in the comments. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the genuses of spruce that I've selected from my wood stash. So these are our 3 spruces that I chose. It's good that they're all slightly different colours as well when distinguishing between them. First up, we've got some red spruce from the Smokies mountain range in America. This is obviously my celebrity wood choice. My supplier has taken the liberty of pointing that out for me. It's the smallest and thickest piece of wood in the lineup, coming in at 564 by 159 mil and a thickness of 6.92 millimeters. As I say, this is my celebrity wood, so I'm going to do a little presentation about the story behind it. Our story begins in the eponymous Smoky mountain range in 1995. The Smoky region notoriously has a wicked selection of older growth spruce trees, and this is about a particular tree which came to be known as the Smokies red spruce. Anyway, in 1995, Hurricane Opal made its way through the mountain range, devastating many of the things it crossed paths with, including this red spruce tree, which was swept up in a landslide. The tree ended up lying in the middle of a public highway within the national park. Now, the Smoky Mountain Range is a highly prized area of natural beauty, and subsequently, it's very highly protected. You can't just go and remove a fallen tree. However, there were 2 guys who were very fond of this particular tree before it had fallen, often hiking up to its spot and noticing the unusual growing conditions that it thrived in. Their names were John and Ted. This can be John and this can be Ted. When they heard about the tree's fate, they were the first ones to beg the authorities to remove it themselves. After a bit of a battle, they did succeed. Now, more on this later. First, just to recap about growth rings and tightness of grain. If you didn't know, tight grain in spruce often equals stiff timber, and the tighter the grain, the slower the tree has grown. So, for example, with plantation-grown spruce, the grain will be a little bit wider as it was planted for efficiency. So you may end up with trees with, say, about 8 growth rings per inch, where, as with older growth spruce, you're looking at more like 14 per inch. Obviously, this is a big estimation, as, of course, every tree is different. Anyway, back to the Smokies mountain range. I said that Ted and John had seen this tree before, and they'd noticed that the soil the tree grew from was only about 15 centimetres thick. These limited resources would mean that the tree did indeed have to grow extremely slowly. In fact, when they counted the growth rings on the rescued fallen tree, they counted on average 65 growth rings per inch. Now let that sink in for a sec. 65 growth rings per inch. They also figured out with some clever science that in the year circa 1588, the tree would have been standing 14 feet tall. To put that into context, that is the same year the Spanish Armada set sail. I love a good story, don't get me wrong. My background is in literature, and the idea of making somebody a guitar with this kind of story, I would love it. But is it worth it? We'll find out. Next up, we've got the Swiss AAA Moon Spruce. Beautiful creamy white colour, very distinctive indeed. This piece of wood is coming in at 579 by 215 mil, at a thickness of 4.43 millimeters. Again, there's a bit of a story about why it's called moonwood, so here we go. The internet threw a load of really weird numbers and confusing science things at me when I was trying to investigate this, so here's my own very brief, very simple understanding of what moon spruce is. Now, the concept of moon-grown wood has been handed down for years by oral tradition, but now with the likes of the internet, it's become a lot less mysterious. Now, obviously, the moon impacts a lot of things in life, like the tides, the migration of animals, and various other things. So it's no surprise that the influence extends to things like trees. So let's go to Switzerland, which is, to my knowledge, the only place that moon spruce is grown. Let's go up into those sweet mountains. Now, what Swiss moon spruce actually refers to is spruce trees that have been felled in the colder weather, specifically during the last quarter of the moon's waning. At this point in the year, the sap levels are actually lower in the timber, which falls trees which are drier and more stable. Plus, the higher altitudes that the typical moonwood is grown at means that the growing conditions are harsher, and as we learned from my last video, slower growth provides tighter grain and more structural integrity. I really didn't like moon spruce when I first heard about it. I was like, this is definitely some astrology bull. But actually it kind of has theory to it, so scratch that. Next up we have what is perhaps the underdog in the race, just a really standard piece of Sitka spruce. It's a very beautiful piece of Sitka, but it's much more commonly found on instruments than the other two. But perhaps that's for a very good reason. I guess we'll find out. It's a very reliable choice because it's widely available. Be interesting to see how it fares next to the other two. Gotta love a Sitka instrument. Really, really nice guitars. Okay, obviously my workshop's not going to be the best place to go and record these properly, so I'm going to take another trip out of the workshop into a better environment for the job. Because we want to do this properly, right?
Like it'd be a good idea just to try and be relatively scientific and to try and be as sort of fair in this testing as possible. I think I'm really interested to see. I mean, Daisy and I literally just had a quick listen to it, and I'm really interested to see what it sounds like under a mic and hear the differences and the similarities between the bits of wood. Pretty cool. So I'm going to get Daisy to hold it in. You're the tap tone expert, so you know what you're doing. And again, let's try and get it so you're pinching the wood in a similar place on each of them. I know it kind of varies depending on the grain and whatever to see where it actually like resonates best. But again, so why don't you do the actual tap testing, and I can just sit back and relax, I suppose. Watch you do the work and it's fine.
As per usual.
Yeah. This is my Neumann TLM 103. It's right now probably just the most sensitive mic that I've got in the room. So it's got a pretty low noise floor. So that means when you're recording quiet things, it just means that you can get a really good capture of the quiet thing really well. And without getting too much hiss or whatever getting in the way.
You ready?
Yeah.
So it's distances. Should we do like one stretched out daisy finger?
Yeah, let's do one stretched out daisy finger.
Okay.
Perfect scientific scale.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that's number one.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Should we go with the next one?
Let's go with the next one.
So this is the moon spruce. Let's go stretched out daisy finger away again. What do you reckon to that?
It's mad how different they are.
That is very bassy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really bassy.
I can't hear as well as I could normally hear because it's not quite next to my ear, but
It's amazing how different they are. It's really, really interesting.
all right. Okay, let's do the daisy distance again.
Yeah.
Finger distance. Same amount of the way down. Ready?
Cool.
Should we listen?
Yeah. What do you think? Before we listen back, what do you think?
I think the best sounding one was the Swiss moon.
Which is the second one?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I heard it. The others I didn't really hear because I was normally, when you're tap testing, it needs to be right next to your ear, but because I was using the microphone essentially as my ear, I didn't hear what I usually hear. So I was the one I heard the most, I guess, was the Swiss moon, but volume obviously doesn't equal quality. What we're actually listening for here is the distinctive ring to it.
Yeah.
It really depends on what you're looking for in a piece of timber, but like what I was told to listen to is just like the quality of that bell-like sound. So you don't want it to be too muddy. You need a kind of clarity to it. That's probably what I'd say I look for. But again, it's kind of subjective.
Yeah.
I think it's really difficult to explain what you're looking for with the tap test as well. I'm actually finding it quite difficult. It's sort of thing that like, when I did my apprenticeships, I just picked up loads of pieces of wood and then your ear kind of trains itself.
Do you want to do a blind test and you guess which one is which?
Sure.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, let's do it. What have we got? Like I'm just not going to look.
Yeah, you can just not look.
Okay.
Let's start with this one. Which piece of wood do you think this is?
I think that's the third one.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the third. I think that's the Sitka, you know.
Okay. Which one do you think this is?
Wow, that is gorgeous. I want to say it's the moon spruce, but also my first instinct was to say it was the Smokies.
Okay.
Give me the last one. No, that's the Smokies. So the second one you gave me must have been the moon spruce because it sounded the best. What, was I right?
No, first instinct was right.
Really? So the one that I preferred the most was the Smokies?
Yeah.
Interesting. What has happened is I've ranked them in price order in terms of my favourite.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
So it's not, well, just from that initial impressions, it's not total, what's a, like, PC way of saying?
It's not total marketing.
Yeah, so it's not all just total marketing, because your first instinct, your first impression of it was actually that the Smoky Mountain Spruce was your favourite.
Oh my god, it sounded great. What did you think?
I don't know enough about wood.
What do you, to your ear, because you are a musical person, you're literally a musician producer.
Like, definitely the Moon Spruce and the Smoky Mountain are my favourite, easily.
No one likes the Sitka, huh? I mean, to me, that is everything I'd
That's
look for.
amazing,
Right,
yeah.
because it's, you know, that clarity I was talking about is really, really clear. And for the fact it's so thick,
and you're still
really
getting all of that.
surprising.
I mostly find it really interesting that the Smoky and the Moon Spruce have such different tonal characteristics. So the Moon Spruce has so much more low end to it.
Yes, it really does.
Yeah. But that could also be because it's just a larger piece of wood.
Yes, but not to that extent. I don't believe that. So I think, but the moon spruce, interestingly, when I'm not miking it up, I would say sounds very good. It sounds better than we recorded it, but that is just the limitations of my ears, I think. The Sitka is not doing so well, is it? Like...
No.
But then again, this is kind of what this is really interesting because that's what segregates higher end instruments from your bog standard ones that you get in the shop, right? Because that is a kind of piece of wood. It's a very nice piece of Sitka, don't get me wrong. Like, again, that is a higher end piece of Sitka than you'd find on a average, you know, factory built guitar.
And also, as I think you've said before, a lot of the tone obviously comes from the wood, but also when you're tuning it and doing your bracing and that whole thing as well. Yeah,
I mean, that just enhances the qualities, right? So each piece of timber I'll like brace slightly different. Well, that was fascinating for me and for you. I know you're a wood nerd.
I am a wood nerd. It's really interesting, just, you know, because this is your world and it's new to me. It's just really interesting learning how, well, like I said before, literally just how a piece of wood sounds so different. It sounds so different, which to me is crazy.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. All right. Thanks, Hugo. You're the best.
Oh my god.
Chaos. Jesus. I hope you guys really enjoyed this experiment. If you were surprised or have any thoughts, leave me a comment. You can also leave one of those super thanks things now. Somebody in the comments last time wanted to buy me a few clamps. I'm all for that. But seriously, yes, like, subscribe for more, and I will see you next time.